The following is a presentation of the ForceCenter podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the ForceCenter podcast feed, and this is one of our deep dive episodes. We are going to dive into Leia's journey through the Skywalker Saga, Part 1. We'll talk more about why Part 1 in a moment. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Knapsack. I kind of can't believe we really haven't done this, but also we've been around so long now, it's good to revisit anything we've discussed on the show before. But Leia in the original trilogy, this is going to be a good one.
Yeah, that's right. This episode, we're going to talk about her journey through the original trilogy. Kind of the reason we wanted to talk about this is just, obviously Leia is one of the most important and vital characters in Star Wars. But I find her whole journey through all 6 Skywalker Saga films that she's in really fascinating to see how all the different ways that they connect and how some of the legend of Leia and her characters built up over these movies. And I wrote up the notes to talk about the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy. And I had one of those rare moments of saying, that is too much for one episode. So we decided to break it into 2 episodes. This first episode, we are going to discuss Leia's journey through the original trilogy. And then we're going to do another episode following up on Leia's journey through the sequel trilogy. But first, of course, we want to let you know that today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. This week, we are recommending Into the Dark by Claudia Gray, a great High Republic book that we'll be discussing soon. So you can download your free audiobook copy of Into the Dark today by going to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Again, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for your free audiobook. And Ken, we have another offer.
Another one indeed. Inside Editions, publisher of a ton of great Star Wars books, is offering 35% off across their website with a special Force Center code. To get your discount, enter the coupon code FC35 or visit the website with this link, insideeditions.com/discount/FC35. This week, we're recommending the Inside Editions book, Secrets of the Jedi. You're going to want to read that because Secrets of the Sith is on the way. So do so by checking out with that code FC35. And now to Leia in the original trilogy.
That is right. So Leia Organa Solo Skywalker is obviously a beloved character, and she's many different things in Star Wars, Ken, right? She is a politician. She is royalty. She is a spy. She's a rebel leader. She's a rebel agent. She's a twin. She's a Jedi. She's a friend. She's a mentor, a wife, a mother. So many different parts to who her character is, who we get to meet in the story, and how she serves the story. She carries the legacy of her biological parents, Padme and Anakin, and her adoptive parents, Brea and Bail. And particularly for those of us like you and I, Ken, who grew up with the original trilogy, she was the primary woman in Star Wars for a long time. So we wanted to celebrate Leia by looking at her path through these movies and really looking at what are her actions, what are her motivations, what are her successes and her failures, and how does the legend of Leia get built up in the actual movies. So, Ken, to kick us off, when you think of Leia right now, what is the main thing you think of?
I think of a quiet, determined strength. End of sentence. Sorry. I know I like to, sometimes we talk for a while, but no, that's it. Quiet, determined strength.
Nice. I really tried to experiment with this question and literally just like say Leia and close my eyes and see like which image popped into my head. And I think there is the quiet, determined strength is definitely there. But the thing that I kept picturing is hope and a blaster.
Yeah.
Because I think when I think of Leia, I think that she is kind and wise and all of these great things, but she's always determined to act. And I think it's one of the things that really sets her apart from other characters is that she really has both sides of this sort of a Star Wars relationship with conflict, of somebody who doesn't want conflict, tries to avoid it, kind, wise, wants to save lives, but she's never questions that she should, act. That
Mm.
whether or not it's the right time is like, maybe we'll be better served by doing nothing. She's always just like, nope, there's a problem. Let's do something about it.
Mhm. Yeah, that's powerful, powerful decision making time and time again. And I would say when I say quiet too, by the way, I think Leia is very loud when she wants to be, needs to be, and that's also part of it too. What can I ask you what image does emerge in your head when you put those thoughts together there and meditate on Leia?
Yeah, I think sometimes it is younger Leia from original trilogy. Sometimes it's Leia from sequel trilogy. I think it is a little bit of like maybe what you're picturing, a little bit of I am a leader who speaks softly, and the fact that I have said something carries a lot of weight because I have this just deep well of uh,
Mm,
power in
mhm.
every respect. So I picture her almost in like a promotional slash motivational poster, head
Yeah,
tilted slightly up, looking at the horizon. It says hope, but then you pan down like, but she's got a blaster.
yeah.
So this is not an empty aphorism. She's gonna fight for hope.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard for me. I talk about it so much, but the eyes of Leia on Crate is just this split second. It's like a second and a half shot of a Leia behind that mask with her eyes. It's just, I just love it. I love it so much. But shortly after that, she's firing a blaster at Finn and Rose. But it's part of her there, and that pops to mind. And I love your little exercise here. I'm trying to do it as I'm trying to listen to you, but I'm also trying to drift away. And you know what, the image that comes to mind a lot is Leia on Cloud City in kind of sort of the Hoth gear, no vest, and with a blaster.
Yeah,
That got me as a kid, just like I that never, the New Hope images, a lot of stuff from Return of the Jedi. I can't wait to talk about, but that one just running around, not just trying to fight. They're fighting their way out. There's great purpose behind it, saving Han and everything there. But that's my princess in a hallway with a blaster fighting for the good.
yeah. Bespin Escape Leia, as the action figures usually call that particular mode of Leia, which yeah, is a great image. There's so many great sort of iconic images of her. It is easy to have them sort of compete with one another, but I think more than anything, it is that mixture of a wise, kind leader who's really willing to do something about whatever her opinion is.
Mm, yeah.
Very, very powerful. So Leia is obviously synonymous with Carrie Fisher in a lot of ways, and Carrie Fisher spoke about that, wrote about that, wrestled with that, and it seems like toward the end of Carrie Fisher's life, really owned it, right? Really,
Mhm.
really had an understanding of the truth of that and how to talk about it. But what traits for you do you think the actual fictional character and what we know about the actual human being, Carrie Fisher, what do Leia and Carrie share to you?
You could go to the quips and the wit and the comedy and the feistiness and those kind of things, and that word feisty, I'm sure, will probably come up again. But I think beyond that, I love an Empire of Dreams, that great doc where they talk about, Lucas was looking for his Leia. He found the daughter of real Hollywood royalty, and someone who grew up with a lot of those pressures and grew up with trying to find herself in that, and then becomes an icon and has to deal with the weight of that. And I think of Leia in the sequel trilogy. That's why I really think it was Carrie Fisher's time to shine again in Seven and and A2 when she was with us, of just like, who is Carrie Fisher now after all these years? And I don't think she ever ran away from Leia. She couldn't run away from Leia, but rediscovering who I am with all these titles and all these responsibilities to people, whether I want them or not, I have them, and still finding myself and being who I want to be, and being who I know I can be and need to be during those times. And Carrie herself failed many times. That was part of her strength too, of just owning that, especially like you said later on. So I think of that a lot too. Born into sort of royalty and starting from there and going on.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. I think the wit is there. I mean, I think some, obviously jokes were written for the character, but she to me has this Carrie Fisher as a human had just a an absolute love of comedy, and I think a
Mm,
that relationship with comedy, it's a joke from one of her shows and books that she repeated a lot, paraphrasing of like, if my life wasn't funny, it would just be true, and that is not acceptable, and like I
mm,
think getting really down to the kind of one of the deep reasons that we tell jokes and that we enjoy comedy beyond just entertainment and fun, but like to truly wrestle with how difficult life can be. And I
mhm.
think that real, real deep well of comedy does come through in Leia's moments of wit. This is somebody going through war and tragedy and coping,
Yeah.
using humor to cope. I love exactly what you're saying with the born into royalty, and born into challenges, kind of born under a little bit of a microscope. It's thrust into a really strange life situation, just as Leia is being, uh, a princess, and having such responsibility, and navigating all that. I think there's also just it's really amazing to watch some of those early original trilogy era interviews with Carrie Fisher around the time of Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back in particular,
Mm,
where there's just this undeniable well of strength of spirit that
mm.
you can it's partially because Carrie Fisher herself has said it places, but you can see herself in interviews almost holding back,
Yeah.
and you can tell like not to be cruel to any of the interviewers, but like she's super smart and she could probably interview circles around you, and you're kind of talking to her like here's this young woman who's in the space movie, and she is just
Yeah.
light years beyond that in her you know knowledge and energy and intelligence. And even in those moments where it's clear in those interviews that maybe Carrie Fisher is not feeling comfortable to totally unleash the full power of Carrie Fisher, that it's there and it's undeniable and it's just this well of power. And I
Yeah.
feel like that sense, kind of what you said immediately of the quiet determination, the quiet
Mhm.
strength, that I think that comes across, that is a true thing of Carrie Fisher that she absolutely imbued Leia with.
There's a little bit of a connection with that. I'm really glad you brought that up. I think you're so right, and I've cited before the Mike Douglas interview with her, Harrison, and Mark Hamill in the summer of '77. The movie's already out. The movie's already a hit, and they're still like doing the promotional train. And she's brought out first because Eddie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds, and this is the only thing we can package. We don't know the other. We don't care about the other guys. We got her. We got this girl.
A
And
carpenter and a guy who was in a Corvette movie, and then yes, the daughter of Hollywood royalty.
yeah, and I look at Leia at the beginning of New Hope, still part of the Imperial Senate, knowing what's going on, saying what she can and saying what she will, but knowing that there's still some sort of a system she has to play in now, but she's going to bust out of that. She's going to bust out of that very soon, and that is very prevalent in the early stuff. And the Empire stuff, there's obviously a lot going on in her life, and a lot of that becomes now very public and all this kind of thing. But so there's some, I don't want to say sadness. That's not fair because there was a great story Mark Hamill was telling about how she showed up for some of the stuff in Empire that she didn't need to be early on because she didn't go to Tunisia and missed part of the fun, and so it's a different part of her life. But like the Empire interviews, there's a little bit of that too, of just like this is still going, and who am I, and man, have I got things to say.
Yeah, 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 and just kind of so much to share, and
Mm,
so
yeah.
much humor and insight and joy. And I googled it. Corvette Summer did come out in 1978, so Mark Hamill is not even yet known for Corvette Summer. So I apologize for misspeaking about the release date of Corvette Summer. Let's get back to Leia, though. Um, so
Eh,
I want to just do a chronological look. We're going to go through the original trilogy now and look at different kind of elements of the character and what they mean to Star Wars and what they mean to this legacy of who is Leia. So we're starting with Star Wars: A New Hope. Leia's actions really set the plot in motion. She has two objectives: get the Death Star plans to the rebellion and enlist the aid of Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi. She, of course, sends the droids on their fateful journey. She ends up captured, tortured by Vader, and refuses to give up the location of the rebel base. She is forced to witness the destruction of Alderaan, which is the death of her parents, her world, possibly her culture. Luke and Han attempt a bumbling rescue of her ultimately. And she takes the reins to actually get them out and make it a full rescue. Then she ultimately succeeds in her mission. She gets the Death Star plans back to the rebellion, and while she does not secure the aid of Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, she does secure the aid of a new hope, a new possible Jedi hope along the way. So, Ken, what do you think? What key elements of Leia's character are established in this first film?
So I'm going to try to avoid just repeating strength over and over again, and steadfast, all those kind of things that she is. Um, the when kind of this idea of when you talk about action, when she decides to take an action and she's in on the cause, um, she's going to do everything she can to get there. Now, look, she was in a prison cell. She's being tortured, and without Luke showing up in that moment, does she get out? No. But then, if she doesn't grab that blaster, I don't know if they get out at all or survive. It is a complete story, after all. But Leia, in A New Hope, this is her task, and now we know kind of a little more specifically what that, what Bail meant, what he, what it really meant spiritually for him to give her that task. So it's like helping people. It's this great cause, but nothing's going to stop her. She's going to succeed, and that's part of the strength that I see in her. And it's, again, she's part of the she's part of the Senate. This is truly a rebel. This is truly someone going against the system for what she knows is right. And I love that aspect over there in New Hope.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. She's very clearly the leader and the politician, and as Luke has said, the one who actually knows what's going on. Like,
Mhm.
Luke is naive and has been kept far away from big galactic politics. He says he hates the Empire, but we don't know exactly kind of where he got that impression or how or why. He doesn't know a ton about how the galaxy actually operates. Han knows how the underbelly of the galaxy operates, but he is a cynical and doesn't really, I think, isn't paying attention to stuff. I don't think he's up on how the Senate voted on particular issues.
Yeah,
That's
right.
not the kind of worldly he is. And Leia knows the score. She knows how the galaxy works. She knows the actual stakes of what's going on between the Empire and the Rebellion, and all the hows and the whys. So you get this picture of this person who is both a politician and a spy, but really just this person who is ultimately, regardless of the role, a leader who truly actually knows what is going on, who has done
Mhm.
the homework. Um, I think we also, are get her, wit and that way of expressing herself right away. Of like, you came in here to get me. Did you have a plan of getting out? All sorts of just little great moments of wit and Stark.
Mhm.
Um, I also think we get to see the political side. She, of course, says, we learn that she is a senator, and she, is being a good spy trying to sell the idea that she's on a diplomatic mission. But I'm always struck when we rewatch things that there is real diplomacy. That famous hologram message to Kenobi is
Mhm.
political, but it's also personal. It is a persuasive speech that
Yeah.
she is trying to appeal to him, that it's his responsibility to help, just like he did in the old days. It's very much that's like, we get to see political Leia. This is her trying to, if she was in the Senate trying to get somebody to vote
Mhm.
this way, that's the kind of speech she'd give to them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then
Mhm.
I think the strength thing that we're probably going to repeat a lot. I think we get to see her strength in terms of like just taking the initiative, being good with a blaster. I think things that are important then, and were extremely important to see in 1977. But we also see that strength of not breaking.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
her resistance to the mind probe is amazing, and that she resists spilling secrets is
Mhm.
we get to see different ideas of what strength is. It's not just the like she shoots people, so she's strong. It's a moral and character strength
Mm,
that we get to see in that. And then the last thing for me is, she dropped some wisdom too. So she's got a little bit of the um that old soul vibe right away, that she is
mhm,
wise beyond her years. I think it's an incredibly important line in Star Wars. It's incredibly important to me that it's in the first film when Luke is just kind of bummed because he thought Han would change his mind, and Leia tells him he's got to follow his own path. No one can choose it for him. That's
right.
such an incredibly important thesis statement for part
Mhm.
of the idea of Star Wars, and it's really important that it comes from Leia.
Yeah, great. Oh, yeah. We can expand on that here in a second. A lot of great stuff in there. I also want to dive a little bit into, since it's about her character. You touched upon it too, and you and I have mentioned as well. But like her humor, her ability to, her snark, her ability to talk. I never want to boil it down. We'll use terms like feisty, which is true, and sassy is true. But those terms can be real head pats to me. Real like, oh,
Hmm.
you're just a sassy one. That opening scene, when Leia's facing off with Vader and she's in shackles, she knows what's about to happen, right? Torture or anything. She has the information they want. She knows she's lying, diplomatic mission, all that kind of stuff. But she's still speaking her mind. She's still saying, and just think of that moment. It isn't just a feisty little sassy princess there, pat on the head, like Snoke to Rey later on in The Last Jedi. That's a real ooh, oh, spit of fire. Like that, it's real talking down to someone. Leia's not that in that moment. She knows what she's up against, and she understands the weight of it, and she's still going to speak her mind. She's still going to give you the what for, and that is part of the strength too, as well. And it can be boiled down to humor and all those kind of things. They're funny. There's some funny exchanges, but I still think that's a great evidence of that strength you and I keep talking about.
Oh yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that. That it's so strong, and it is right at the beginning of the film. And I think you're right to point out it's part of, I think maybe part of the reason that I wanted to have this conversation is because you can say about Leia that a huge part of what makes her powerful is that she is, feisty, and she's good with a blaster, and she fights her way out. And to me, there's nothing wrong with those things.
No,
They
yeah.
can become problematic they're when in a story they're that's it, right?
Hmm.
That you're trying to present. This is a strong woman character because she was snarky and then shot somebody. Like,
Right.
I and if you stop there, it can just feel like this very cheap, surface level
Hmm.
idea of strength. And what I love about Leia is even from this first film, she is well rounded. So you absolutely can say feisty. You absolutely can say
Yeah.
fighter good with a blaster, but there's so much more there, is you're pointing out right away with we get the moment where she's, not gonna back down. She shoots the trooper, but then we immediately get this strength and
Mm.
this charisma, and this being a good spy and not being frightened by this, incredibly imposing, terrifying figure of Vader. It adds all of these different kinds of strength.
Yeah, it's also to be a weapon in the chest of weapons there to use. Of she is diminutive in size only, staring up at this force of evil that she doesn't know even the depth of that connection yet, and she's saying what she's saying, and it's great stuff, and it connects to Carrie too. I think how many conversations do you think Carrie was in off camera all through her life, but particularly in the '70s? As this young ingenue coming up in Hollywood, where she just had to sit there and realize, man, I'm smarter and funnier than all of you. And
Yes.
you think you have power over me.
Yes. Darth Vader. Only you could be so bold. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other thoughts on kind of key elements of her character that's established here?
No, no, yeah, no, no. I definitely want to connect them to the larger picture too.
Awesome, awesome. Which is our next point of discussion here is what kind of big picture elements of Star Wars, which key ideas or themes of Star Wars does she introduce in this movie, given that it is our first bit of Star Wars? This is obviously
Mhm.
Star Wars grows and evolves, but the first film, Star Wars initially, then Star Wars A New Hope, there's a lot that gets established here that everything else evolves from. What what is Leia carrying?
Well, I love that you brought up the thing she says about Han towards the end of he's got to make his own choices there. Star Wars is big about choice. And I think Leia brings to Star Wars the idea of conviction in your choices, justice out of your choices. And even though she's familiar with the Jedi and she's probably knows the terms and maybe Bale told her tales. Who knows? Who knows? She knows all that stuff, but she doesn't understand it yet the way that she will eventually. Definitely some documented moments now in extended canon of her using the Force without even really understanding what it is. Obviously, I get that, but just she's an example of going towards the light because it's there, and you don't have to have the robe and the laser sword. And Star Wars is about that. Make those choices, have it flow into justice in the galaxy and going towards the good and all those things there. It's very base level, but I see that particularly in New Hope that's to that moment you just said. She's made her choice a long time ago, and she has full conviction.
I really love that. I think that's a great way to look at Leia working, I guess, with Han in this sort of thematic moment to be a pillar of making Star Wars very democratic.
Mhm.
Because it is absolutely a story of destiny where Luke is the one with the power who doesn't know he has the power yet. But Leia really does lay out we get to see her as the leader, and then she sees Han's cynicism and his selfishness, and she just kind of she names him, shames him, and moves on.
Right.
She's like, I've made my choice. I am doing what I think is absolutely right because people in the galaxy are suffering. You seem to be in it just for the money. I wonder if you care about anything. I'm not going to talk to you about it anymore. You choose. This is not my problem. I'm choosing to do the right thing. If you want to choose the right thing to do, great. Otherwise, bye. And that really sets up Han to turn around and make that better choice, which makes it in this very first Star Wars that it isn't just about Luke being the one and only chosen one. He couldn't have done any of this without Leia and Han.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, look at it. You fly away, boy. And if you don't come back, whatever.
Yep. I'm offering you an opportunity to help out the greater good. Did you say no? Okay, well then I'm moving on to the next person and I got no more time for you.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah. Uh I think that's so great. I think for me, I have this. I really like looking at A New Hope in particular as a sort of the DNA theory of Star Wars that Luke really carries the idea of the Jedi and destiny and the Force, and Han really carries the scoundrels and the bounty hunters and the weird cantina aliens with him, and then Leia really carries the war and the politics.
Mm.
And the first Star Wars is a very fun movie that, particularly when it came out, was this breath of fresh air of it's this thrilling adventure and a relatively simple story of good and evil and a break from sort of dour and depressing films, a fun romp. But even within that, it is still inspired by what Lucas saw going on in the politics of the day and how they reflected failings of systems across history. And Leia is carrying all that potential. We
Yeah.
don't focus on it, but we learn about the existence of the Senate, about the existence of the rebellion, about even just the idea that Alderaan is a peaceful world, and just like all of these kind of, this is a big complex galaxy with actual political systems, with actual rival parties and actual strategy and knowledge, the way that Leia knows that they were allowed to escape because the Empire is too powerful. If they wanted to follow him, they would have. Like, she carries this much larger idea of what actually motivates. It's called Star Wars,
Mhm.
and a war happens in the stars, and there's reasons that war happens. And I think Leia, especially in the first film, really represents all of that machinery.
Yeah, it's wow. Yeah, this is even breakdown down simple, but yeah, I had to think about that. Like the Imperial Senate, we kept mentioning that, and like she is it, she is it to us
Yeah,
growing up. That's it, because then it's wiped away so fast. But yeah, she represents all of that.
yeah, and it wouldn't be there, as even if it had been mentioned in passing, it would not have been as strong if Leia wasn't from that background of,
Right.
I'm a politician who can't be a politician anymore because the government has been turned into just a total puppet government of this emperor. So I'll become a spy. I'll become a rebel leader because that is what's needed now, and that's, the story of Star Wars in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
So in A New Hope, Leia obviously suffers quite a bit in the film. She is tortured. She loses her parents in her home world. So she suffers a lot, but on screen, she takes it in stride. There's been a lot of discussion about that. I think a lot of storytelling to kind of address that in more recent times. How do we feel about that, though, when you just sit down to watch Star Wars A New Hope and we see Leia suffers, but she doesn't spend a lot of time wrestling with it on screen?
I it's it's something that I initially, I mean, I'm talking, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 into that range. It doesn't stand out to me, right? It's just you're watching this crazy space adventure. Luke's the hero, so of course everyone's there to serve Luke's story. Put that blanket on him. He's sad. Um, and then it becomes a joke almost like, is that kind of weird? Oh yeah, it is kind of weird. She's the one who just lost millions of people, and there's great memes and jokes there. So it starts from that place for me. That's kind of my relationship with it, being part of that generation. I think we demand more of storytelling. We demand more of our characters. I think we demand a lot more of our female characters as we should. And so I'm not casting any stones at George. It's a big moment that's kind of glaring when you stop and think about it. But you touched upon what we've done with it and what the story continues. I think Empire and Return of the Jedi start building from it right there. We didn't wait 20 years to get more storytelling um, to correct this kind of wrong. I think it starts immediately, and therefore I go back to that moment now and I take inspiration with it. Not that she doesn't deserve to have a moment by herself, and I'm sure there's I can almost hear my girlfriend screaming in the other room of like, yeah, that's welcome to being a woman, you know, and there's some great power behind that. I'm not saying it as a joke, but just like there's a lot that I look to that scene and it shows how we have grown as an audience and continue to grow and need to grow, and how it can also just represent something pretty powerful for this character. I'm speaking all around, kind of just all around the scene here, but I'm like slipping on the ice here, I guess, just skating in any directions. But I think about that scene often, and I choose to have inspiration from it now.
Yeah, no, I think you're saying a lot of powerful and important stuff, and I think your mention of your girlfriend obviously reminds me to say that yes, we are two men of a certain age discussing Leia, and there are definitely insights to be had from people who are not us, and we do understand and respect and welcome that.
Mhm.
Um, and I do think storytelling has evolved, and I think if there were a moment like that, it would be I think receive some needed discussion
Mhm.
if we had a moment exactly like that. um, I think kind of picking apart the different parts of the idea, and I heard you saying parts of all these things.
Mhm.
um, I think one, there's just it is absolutely constructed so Luke is the main character for
Yeah.
sure, no doubt about that, and centering him.
Mhm.
And so it ends up in this moment that is memeable, that we are centering his loss of this older gentleman he's only known for a little time instead of the loss of Leia's entire planet. Definitely. I also think that there is, in its construction, A New Hope is a balancing act between wanting to have really high galactic stakes of like, we destroy a whole planet, we destroy this massive, moon-sized laser. So it has these high stakes, so it wants to have both those high stakes and still be fun, right? Because that
Mhm.
was a part of the point of it, of like,
Right.
let's keep our foot on the gas, let's have fun summer movie escapism. So we do see Luke mourn, and he gets centered more. Obviously, he hangs his head in sadness when he sees his horribly murdered aunt and uncle, and he
Yeah.
mourns for a moment, gets the old cape on the shoulder from Leia's, and then we move on. We don't dwell on the horror.
Right.
In general, I think is a choice of A New Hope. You could retell that story as the most gritty, shocking, awful series of events that happen to these characters, Luke and Leia in particular, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I think it makes a choice not to dwell on that, and that's part of what I think made this movie magic and made people, come flying out of the theaters and now watch it on streaming and want to,
Yeah.
jump into an X-wing and have a sense of adventure. Um, and I think it's really good that you point out that even if the trauma isn't addressed immediately in A New Hope, that it does have ramifications in the next couple of movies. Splinter the Mind's Eye I haven't read it in years, but I've always been affected by. There's a lot in there of Leia reflecting on the torture,
Mhm.
what she went through, and in jumping to this more modern area, there's a lot of great stuff in novels and comic books really dealing with Leia's, understandable uh, anger and
Mhm.
sadness and about what happened to Alderaan. So I think there is a great effort to fill out that story.
Mhm.
I think this other element that I hear you sliding toward on the great ice of conversation as well is, regardless of what you think of that moment, if it was intentional to not dwell on the trauma too long, if it was, an unfortunate oversight where we're
Mhm.
really centering a man's pain and ignoring a woman's, regardless of anything else you might think about this moment, I think it does establish her as like the steadfast, almost unbreakable character of Star Wars.
Mhm.
That uh, that those moments can be read as, if you're just looking at what's happening on the screen, of like, yeah, Leia went through horrific trauma, but because she's a leader and she's been trained for this, that she is the character who's going to say, I'm the one who knows that we didn't just have a great victory by escaping the Death Star. That was just a very small part of what needs to be done. We're literally being chased right now. And as soon as we're done being chased by these TIE fighters, then the actual real battle begins. I'm the leader. I know that. And I have the emotional strength to stay focused on that and nothing else right now. And
Mhm.
this kid and that cocky guy in the cockpit, they don't have that perspective. They don't have that strength. So I'm going to give it to them because they need it.
Yeah. They let us get away. I mean, I love that moment with Han.
You absolute fool. They let us get away. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's other things that pop up with Leia's character, and some of it related to even Padme later on, of what you're of just not, you just don't have time. You ain't got time to bleed, in a way, but also, not allowing and not feeling later on to give herself some of those, real human moments, which is something that we're going to talk about during the Empire section too. But yeah, so I think from it, because I was thinking too, Joseph. I don't know your thoughts on this, like while you're talking there about that scene of, if it was done now, I think we'd have more to it. But I was thinking, would we get kind of like a Cassian Jin back and forth argument? Would almost like Leia be the Cassian one in that moment, telling Luke, like, get it, come on, get in a fight, man. You're just getting here. I've been in this my whole life. Um, I'm trying to think of like, how would I want Leia in that moment, Like, because I still don't think she'd be talking down to Luke or not acknowledging the pain, because I think that's part of her strength too. Yeah, I just lost my entire planet, but I know you're suffering too, and that's all part of this, and we got to move forward.
Yeah. I almost feel like, yes, because I think it is an important part of her character that she is comforting Luke as well, because it's empathy, right? That
Yeah.
she is somebody who understands that he is not as prepared as her for loss. He has probably maybe not experienced it as much, and she's being kind and empathetic. I almost feel like a more modern version of that scene would at least kind of let us, the audience, know, like, having her um, say, like, I trust me, I know the pain of what you're going through, and I know it's hard, but we need to pick up and keep moving. Just something that does
Mhm.
actually acknowledge that she is going through pain as well.
Yeah, you're right. You're so right, and you're such a great writer too. It's just like that's kind of all you would need. They were almost
Yeah.
there. They were so close, and it's of its time, and to your purpose of foot on the gas. That's definitely, and Luke's the main story, main hero. We could break that all down, but I think you're right. I think that would be out of empathy and compassion comes this. I know what you're going through. In fact, look what I just went through. But let's go.
Yeah, because regardless, like I said, of any other extremely legitimate concerns or criticisms or observations about that moment, uh, if, for better or worse, anything else, it does establish this part of Leia that becomes, I think, extremely important in the sequel trilogy. I think becomes a big part of Padme's character of I am a strong character who can really keep moving forward, and I have this perspective that I need to serve the greater good, and then I'll take care of me. Which
Yeah.
is a great and fascinating discussion. Um,
Mhm.
so yes, I will say again for caveat's sake that this is definitely a complex scene, a complex issue, a complex part of Leia's journey, and we have the utmost respect that there are going to be a lot of different opinions and takes on that. We are sharing ours here, and again, respect that it's complex in a lot of different ways to look at it. Anything else to add about A New Hope before we take a quick break?
No, other than look, man, this was the film, man. This was the character, this was the look, the gown, the buttons, everything. I mean, it's so iconic, and I just love sometimes just reflecting on Leia in A New Hope. It's such a big part of where we are now as a franchise and fans of it.
Yeah. It's this one movie, but the white dress, those buns,
Hmm.
iconic forever.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to dive into Leia's journey through Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi back in a moment.
Hey, Force Center friends, make sure you're keeping up to date on all the great content from Jennifer Landa. Whether it's YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok, you whippersnappers, Force Center's own Jennifer Landa continues to bring you fun, informative, and insightful laughs and moments.
Also, Jennifer brings her experience and perspective as a Star Wars loving mother to her DIY projects, blogs, and more. So be sure to head on over to jennylanda.com. That's JENILANDA.com for articles like how to make your own Darth Maul sneakers or 10 unique Star Wars baby gift ideas.
Follow Jen on Twitter and Instagram at Jennifer Landa and on TikTok as Jennifer Landa 1138.
And we are back to continue our discussion of Leia's journey through the original trilogy. We discuss some big overall thoughts and what all gets established about who she is, how she helped set up all of Star Wars in A New Hope, and then we get to move on to The Empire Strikes Back. So, Ken, in this sequel to Star Wars, we see Leia as a military leader and wrestling with dealing with her personal feelings. She has a key role in the setup, defense, and evacuation of Echo Base on Hoth. We see her pain early on at the prospect of losing Luke and Han. She is the last to evacuate the base, escapes with Han, and then struggles to deny her romantic feelings for him. She is once again captured. She eventually admits her feelings to both herself and Han, and then fails to save him despite trying hard. She does then save Luke, who most likely would have died without Leia's timely rescue, and Leia returns to the rebellion intent on saving Han. So, for you, what new ideas are added to the legacy of Leia in Empire Strikes Back?
I think even she's taken a ton of action already. Don't get me wrong. But I've touched upon this before. At the end of New Hope, I'm not saying I expect her to be in a Y wing or an X wing, and maybe she could have if we shoot this film now. But at the end of it, she is standing in a control room, just waiting. And look, there's a lot of characters standing in that control room, just waiting. But she's the princess. This is her fight. This is her rebellion, and all she can do is just wait. And I love you pick it up in Empire, and chaos is all around her. The base is collapsing, and she is there with her troops. She is there to the bitter end. She is She is in the middle of it, leading from the front, and it's just this leadership in action, literally, figuratively, spiritually, emotionally. To actually get to see it is something that's sets up even Leia in Return of the Jedi. Now she's on the ground in Endor, and she's all those kind of things we're going to talk about. But that's what Empire does. It really took her out of that white dress. It said now she's got boots on and she's fighting, because that's where she knows she needs to be, and that's part of what it is. So that's one of the areas I go to with Leia and Empire.
Yeah, absolutely. She's in basically, we kind of get used to it as Hoth outfit in the many, amazing wardrobe designs for Leia, but she's kind of in the basic military fatigues that everybody else is in. She's down on the ground in that control room, making calls, refusing to leave the base, giving the X-Wing pilots or the orders and laying out the battle plan. We get to see her as a leader and as a tactician. So I think that's a huge part of what's added to Leia's legacy. I think it does start to deal with what we didn't get to see in A New Hope, as you were saying, that it introduces that the result of having had a lot of loss is that she knows that, doesn't want to experience that again, and we get to see those moments where it's clear that she is very concerned about losing the people she's come to care about in this war of Han and Luke in particular, and we see that in general with her not wanting to leave the base until everybody is taken care of. So it's definitely a part of her leadership, but there's also these more personal moments of the fear of loss that kind of speak to the trauma that she's been through. And then I think for me, like the biggest thing is just getting to see that battle between what she thinks her responsibility is for the greater good versus allowing herself to live her own personal life, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of that breaks down in this fun way between the I am the leader. I have rational reasons for everything that I do, rational choices, and I, really go forward, making plans, stiff upper lip. And not only is it that she kind of doesn't want to admit to herself that she's attracted to Han, there's this great element that there's this a little bit of purposeful rigidity that she has taken on in order to keep doing what she needs to do. And I think that gets brought out in fun moments where Han kind of eggs her on by calling her a committee, right? That's really this, it's this fun banter, but it's and she yells, "I'm not a committee." He's kind of poking at her and going I know you're an emotional, intuitive, romantic person who feels things because you're a person as well as a leader. And it's, I think her journey in this film is to allow herself to be both the leader, the princess, the one woman committee who makes decisions, and a person who can, love openly, love fiercely.
So, I am not a committee. It's just one that I just always love that line.
Yeah. So I think it gives her great, expands her internal life. Excuse me, I was choking a little bit in my excitement. Expands her internal life.
Yeah, absolutely, it does. Absolutely, and the bogey and Bacall of it all is great. But to me, I absolutely great purpose to a lot of it there, if not all, quite frankly.
So obviously, moments of great depth, moments of great comedy in Empire Strikes Back. What moments of depth and what moments of comedy resonate with you?
I was just watching everything this morning. I got it to about the Hoth battle. I was just watching it over a cup of coffee this morning, and again, I love everything about I call it the bogey and Bacall stuff, but just the banter and it's classic Hollywood kind of romance, kind of sweeping romance banter to me. But I look where he's in New Hope. Where we talked about it. We meet her and she's standing before Vader, and Vader represents a lot of things, but including this system that she's forced to work in, and she's going to say something about it. She's going to stand up against it, and for the greater good and the greater purpose. And here she is fighting. She's fighting what she feels for Han. We know that. We see that almost from the opening shot. and she's not afraid to fight against that either. It's another system she's expected to be roaming around in, and she's not sure if she wants to or how she wants to approach it. And the moment, the kiss and Luke moment, for all the stale takes and jokes you can make about that moment, it's fine. But I was watching that scene today of just like just her going, you don't know everything about women yet either. She's once again in control. She once again has the knowledge, and it means a lot. It's a lot to the character. It's not just witty banter. It's purposeful.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is so easy to just say, "Hey, it's witty Hollywood banter," but then, yeah, you dig down into like, what are Han and Leia doing?
Mhm.
Han is trying to get her to admit something about herself, and for her part, she is also kind of been trying to push Han to be like, "Yeah, but you're more than this guy who cares just about himself, and you won't admit that either."
Yeah, totally.
In all of their stressful, attracted to one another, barbs against one another, really push toward those making those discoveries. um
Yeah.
yeah, for me, it's just always one of my favorite comedy lines of the "would it help if I got out and pushed" is just it's so like it's just dragging Han and his junky old ship.
Well, especially because we know Han, and I think this is where Solo Star Wars Story really succeeds. Just Han has this. He's trying to fake it till he makes it to the bitter end almost, and that's just her just going, "You ain't who you think you are."
Yeah, and even that gets, right. That's the whole back and forth about, she says, "I'd like to be around when you make a mistake," and like, "Oh, I changed my mind about that," and like, "Oh, you do have your moments," like, yeah, that she's calling him on his BS,
Yeah.
and that's one of my favorite moments of it. Would it help if I got out and pushed? Also, talk about just like joking about a terrifying situation to take some of
Mm.
the terror away, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You just imagine Leia out there pushing on it.
It might. Yeah.
Yeah, kicking a landing gear. Come on. And then for me on the depth side, one of my favorite shots of Leia, and I think for me, often cited as is one of the things I think that elevates Empire as a film for me, is just some of the shots of her reacting, just her eyes when the doors to Echo Base are shut.
Yeah.
You don't need a monologue. You don't need her to tell anybody uh, about how much it would hurt her personally, not just the cause of the rebellion, but how much it would hurt her personally if Luke and Han don't come back. It's just all there in her eyes, and it's such a powerful acting moment in it. It's so great. It's so early on, and she's already had the like, what? Of course, I want you to stay. You're a natural born leader. You're a great help.
Mm.
She's putting up those walls, and that one shot of her eyes tell us like, yeah, that there's something that she is not being entirely honest with herself about the sheer
Yeah.
depth of her emotion for both of these men in different ways, and her fear of losing them.
Yeah. I know we're highlighting the character mostly here in this conversation, but um, Carrie in her career, and was known as an author, a writer, and just a personality and performer and everything. I don't want to ever overlook her acting ability. I think what you're just pointing out in Empire is some of her best work. I mean, I love her when Harry Met Sally. I'm a big fan of that movie and big fan of her in that movie. And I know in Force Awakens she fell a little off her game. There's, she had to get her confidence back up, and I still think she brought it in those moments, probably even more than she knew. And I think in Last Jedi, I think she was spectacular. And some of the stuff that in the director and the Jedi doc of them having to give her moment and her just being so present and in those scenes, I think she really was more than just someone who wore these costumes. She made choices, and Empire is some of the finest work. And I'm glad you pointed to that moment. It's a great moment for a reason because of what she brought to it.
Yeah, it is one of the things that make these not, you know, space movies that are kind of fun adventure serials. They make them incredibly real. It strips away anything like, is a wampa silly? Would
Yeah.
a ship make noise in space? It strips that all away, and it's just so human and so powerful.
Mm,
Uh,
mm,
and I think I think that shot then really does tie back in a great way to a similar but different, soulful expression when she connects with Luke and
yeah.
knows that they have to go back, right? Because
Yep.
it's kind of these bookends of this fear of loss she just lost Han, and now in this moment of realizing that there's still hope for her to not lose Luke.
Yeah, absolutely.
So arguably, I would say this is the original trilogy film where Leia herself has a true character arc that's given room to breathe. The stasis is that she can't admit her feelings for Han or doesn't want to, and then eventually she does admit those feelings. There is active change, and then she ends the film comfortable with her feelings for him and determined to save him. What to you is the power of her having an arc, or the power of this specific arc?
I think it gets really to this level of allowing yourself to have this 360-degree life, and sometimes you might not be able to, might not be fortunate enough to have those times and moments, and again, there's great strength in what Leia knows she has to do, and this we see this, I think, in Padme too, and this is the kind of connection. But I just the moment where Han sees her, he knows her. That I know moment is so great for some reasons, and Harrison and Kirshner and everyone being so plugged in to what the character of Han is doing in that moment. It was patience on his part, and he's very insistent, and he's very flirty, and he's very scoundrelly and troublesome when he needs to be. But at the fact that beneath it all, he knew her. He saw who she really was. He saw who she was beneath all the titles and all the actions, and he didn't. It doesn't have any, loves all those things about her, but he sees that moment, and so in that moment, it comes out of just duress and pain and fear, but the admission of it is such a powerful moment for her. It's such a moment for all of us to just go, allow yourself to be seen, to be loved, allow yourself to have all those little things in life. And it's almost like the war. I don't want to take away from the war and the rebellion, but it's almost like all that is just like what you could put around your heart, and it's a real ice melting moment for me. Not that she didn't need some of that ice around her heart and soul because of what was going on. You know what I mean? But that's why that moment really works for me. And I remember when you first kind of introduced that in the ForceCenter conversations, it's like, that's what Leia's doing here in this particular film. And it starts with the opening looks. It starts with Solo telling Riken he's got to go, and her just kind of being like, oh, that breaks my heart, but I can't let that happen. It starts from there and it ends with that big moment. It is quite an arc.
Yeah. I think it just makes her so human because she is, a steadfast character. She can
Mhm.
take a lot, but she keeps fighting, and that continues to be her story. And I just love that we get to see that she is truly human, and trying to deny her feelings of like, no, you're a natural leader. Of course, that's why I want you to stay. Even up to the kiss moment in the Falcon, where she's saying like, I like nice men. I have
Yeah.
it's almost this little bit in Star Wars, this hint of like, no, she has a dating profile and she knows, the kind of men she allegedly likes, and that is not Han. But the
Right.
truth is that, yeah, she sees past his, bravado, and she knows that he is the guy who had a choice and he turned around to save Luke. I think she knows that's who he is.
Right.
Um, and I think for me, there's an importance in this arc of seeing her internal life, seeing her be human in terms of like, I have an idea of who I am and what I want, but there's a part of me that's saying that's wrong, and I'm resisting that, and the part of me that's honest breaks through
Mm.
is powerful. It shows the importance of being honest with ourselves, for me. And I love what you're saying about the "I love you" moment, because we can connect, or we can focus, I think, on the "I know," which is great for a lot of reasons that you laid out. But I hadn't really thought about it this way until you were talking about it. That they've kissed, and now there is a little bit of a sense of we're together on Cloud City, where they're talking about getting out of it, and they when they leave, she says, and then you're going to be as good as gone, right? And
Right.
so there's a sense that, yeah, they're together, and she still doesn't want him to go, and she's maybe being a little bit more honest about that. But shouting "I love you," right?
Hmm. Hmm.
This is this is so great to have this conversation where we're going back to like, uh A New Hope, when she's a politician who is secretly a spy.
Mm-hmm.
For the rebellion, she is used to having all of these walls up because she needs to. She goes through horrible trauma, but she needs to keep moving, so the walls go up. So it's powerful to strip away those walls, but the location of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
In front of Vader
Right.
and stormtroopers and just around people that she would normally need to keep all the walls up for her own safety, just rips herself open to make sure that Han knows that
Mm.
that she loves him.
It's it's almost like it'd begin a new hope if Han was there and Vader was like, "You love him," she'd be like, "Absolutely not. Look, absolutely not. What are you talking about?" But here it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm breaking it down to real simple, but yeah, that really works for me. If just like everything going on in the moment and who's around her and what she's been fighting, and to be able to admit it, then it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, yeah. I also think, before the word attachment was literal in Star Wars and it was so key to it, those themes start really getting built up in Empire Strikes Back, and then it paid off in Return of the Jedi. And I think Leia's arc is so important to the themes of attachment and compassion.
Mm.
For Leia, compassion is a strength. I think that's why it's so important to me that we see early on in the film that she truly fears losing Han and Luke. And by the end of the film, she loses Han,
Mm.
but through this arc that she's gone through this journey, she has opened herself up to her own emotions a little bit more. And she does manage to save Luke, and she manages to save Luke by being open and intuitive to
Mhm.
hear him through the Force, right? You can look at that moment as like they're twins and they're connected and he reached out to her, but there's a part of me that likes looking at her arc as maybe at the beginning of Empire, if he had called out to her, she couldn't have heard that. But she's gone through this change where she has uh, you know fostered this side of herself that is her emotional needs, her connections, her compassion as a strength, and that helps her to be able to hear and therefore save Luke.
By golly, I think you've done it again, sir. I think that's a wonderful take on that. This is someone who's danced around the forest. We talked about it. There's in Princess Leia of Alderaan, great book, great moments where, man, I suddenly leapt 12 feet. I don't know how I did that. All those kind of things on a you know role playing game stat sheet that you could say she's connected to. And yes, the twin thing too. No, I think you're right. I think allowing that kind of change. There's a bit of allowing that kind of loss and overcoming the attachment and the Anakin like selfishness behind his attachments. We've talked a lot about with Ahsoka, his and different versions, different ways to approach attachment, which in and of itself might not be a bad thing, you know, in life. Caring for people, not a bad thing. I think you're right. I think it is a real spiritual opening, not an awakening, but an opening and connecting to, what she doesn't necessarily know is the living force, but just being able to hear it and then trust it. Imagine this too. I think it's easy to overlook that moment in story as Leia, who again is under could probably talk the force with people. I know the terms. I get it. I can talk about it, but has been in government, has been in this war, has been raised as royalty, and all these kind of things. To just you suddenly hear or feel you hear a voice. It's not unlike Luke in the cockpit of the X-wing. I have to turn off my targeting computer because this voice is in my head that I think that's kind of crazy. But Star Wars is asking you to, at some point, you have to trust what you feel and not just what you see. We always talk about Star Wars wants you to ask why and not how or what. I think it asks the characters that too, and why you should trust that and why you should hear that. And I think to have that follow the "I love you, I know" moment, it's completely in line. And I love that you brought that up, sir. I think that's great.
Oh, thank you. And I think the way you're describing it is just great too. I think it's the reason that moment is so powerful because of the way it's acted, the way it's written,
Mm.
and it is so great as you are to really focus on the like Lando's coming at it from this very pragmatic and
Mhm.
possibly selfish perspective of like, we are lucky to have got the hell out of there. And then we, the audience, feel that emotion, we feel that connection, and we feel that absolute truth and that absolute power of her saying, we have to go back. And then Lando's like, the hell are you talking about? And just like the certainty with like, no, we're going, you know? It's
All right, all
powerful.
right, all right, all right. It's one of my favorite Leonard quotes. No, but again, because look, go to the Alderaan moment. Go to that. I mean, there's a good chance Leia might be like, well, that sucks, but we got to go because the fight is what's more important. But that kind of connection, and again, Luke's a valuable asset. We kind of want him on the team. I get that, but no,
Yeah.
it's very spiritual there.
But yeah, that's not what it's about. It's
Yeah.
it's Lando kind of representing fear and rigidity and logic and as
Mhm.
you said, just looking at what your eyes are telling you, and it's that versus Leia's triumph of compassion
Mm.
and being intuitive and feeling as well as seeing, as you said. Very well said. So we're going to move on to Return of the Jedi. In this final film in the original trilogy, Leia has two missions in the film. Nice, simple, straightforward. Rescue Han and crush the Empire once and for all. She infiltrates Jabba's palace disguised as the bounty hunter Bush Bausch Bush, depending on how you choose to pronounce it. She gets captured. She is chained up and made to wear a bikini. She then strangles her captor Jabba to death and ultimately does save Han. She then travels to Endor, discovers and helps forge an alliance with the Ewoks, and also discovers that Luke is her brother. Her torturer, Darth Vader, is her father, and the power of the Force does flow through her. She then helps take down the shield bunker, dealing a fatal blow to the Empire. She confirms her romantic love of Han and her deep, luminous connection to her brother, and the Empire falls. Missions accomplished.
First,
Uh,
first of all, I gotta say, Return of the Jedi is my first Star Wars experience in theaters. All of you know, the one that I actually remember. But I am guilty over the years of going, I don't know. Sometimes Return of the Jedi is not my favorite one to watch. The way you just described 59 things that Leia goes through, I'm like, oh, that's all pretty big. That movie's got a lot going on.
Leia has a busy film in Return of the Jedi. It's
Yeah.
really fascinating to look at. Yeah, what is she trying to do? What does she accomplish? What does she just have to take in and keep moving? All
Hmm.
great stuff. So I think there are some very clear new ideas. We've been talking each film of like what parts of the Leia legacy are established in this film and how. I think for this film, it's the idea of Hut Slayer, as it's later labeled in the great Claudia Gray book. So the role of Hut Slayer and Skywalker twin Force user. These are huge additions to Leia's legacy. So what I wanted to ask is, do you think both of those new parts of Leia's legacy do they fit with the character that we already knew well from A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially the Skywalker twin moment, and somehow I've known, somehow I've always known. Really, again, if she's known, she didn't want to face it or didn't want to connect it, wasn't open to experiencing it. So now that we're building off some of the stuff you and I were just discussing, an empire and her being able to, as best she can, wrap her brain around that now. And the Hutslayer stuff is a apprentice of action. It is once again this no one else is going to save me in this moment. R2, give me a hand, but she takes matters in her own hands, and so she becomes an action hero in this movie, even more than Empire. A lot of great action, as I stated earlier, but in Jedi, man, she is right there, even playing field. She is an action hero in this movie, and I think that's all right too. That's part of it.
Yeah, that's great. That is so great. I love that you use that turn of phrase because I hadn't really thought about it that way. It's like, yes, Leia in general has a lot more proactive moments where Leia did X. But to just label it as action hero, you're totally right. She becomes an action hero fully in this movie. She has some moments of action in the other films, but this is the one
Mm.
where she is literally jumping into the fray a lot.
Yeah, I mean, what's when I think Return of the Jedi and Leia, one of the things I hear is Luke going, "Leia, wait!"
And just like, catch up or don't, whatever.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing this. Yeah. I think there's Return of the Jedi is so fascinating because the original trilogy ends, and so it's the jumping off point for lots of thoughts about all the characters, but Leia in particular, because you have these kind of new additions to her legacy, particularly the Skywalker twin, possibly future Jedi, and all of the expanded universe and playground and bar discussions, and eventually following up on that in the sequel trilogy. There's kind of so much to that. I really love the Hut Slayer moment and idea, because I think uh, it makes her an action hero. It makes her somebody who is not going to walk away from somebody like Jabba the Hutt, who is going to, continue to come after them, who is going to continue to wreak pain and havoc in the galaxy. And it really connects her, I think, to Anakin in a way of just like doing what needs to be done.
Right.
Of like this, this isn't pleasant, this isn't great, but this is what I think needs to be done for the greater good.
Mm. Do what must be done is something we've been talking a lot about on Clone Wars lately, and to see it carried to her, that's great.
Yeah, yeah. And then I feel like, there has been discussion over the years of, you can still even find people our age who are like, yeah, no, Star Wars went wrong when they made Leia the sister. It wasn't set up. And what about the kissing of Luke? And, so you can still find people in this day and age who are not sure about the Skywalker twin reveal. But to me, I feel like it is a direct payoff of some of the moments we talked about in Empire Strikes Back. We saw the absolute depth of not only her connection to Luke, but the power of her intuitive side. The part of the Force, the part of the story of the Force that has been there since A New Hope, that it is intuitive, that it is about letting go and feeling a truth rather than, writing an essay about the truth and having a bullet pointed
Yeah.
list. It is feeling. And I think the Skywalker reveal in Return of the Jedi is just a direct payoff of seeing Leia as somebody who can, probably write the greatest speech, the greatest diplomatic argument, but is also incredibly intuitive.
Yeah, I want to discuss that a little bit here. Just not waylaying our conversation too much here, but just I get, I saw the kiss moment again, and you can laugh at it and chuckle and make all the jokes that you want about it, because thousands of them have already been made for generations. But you're right. The moment we're talking about with Luke underneath the Cloud City, uh even if they were going to go another direction, even if Luke, there's another character, it's Luke's sister, it's all that kind of stuff, like, oh, okay, what do you do with that moment? Like, I think that you would feel that if you didn't address it, that'd be a hey, they didn't pay it off moment. And I don't like to use that term. They didn't pay it off much, because I think it's misused a lot in terms of film and TV criticism. But yeah, to your point, Joseph, like that's pretty big clue of what might have needed to happen with that character all along.
Yeah. It continues her growth, and there's these great moments, even as she realizes Luke tells her the truth, that, she wrestles with it a little bit, but comes to that truth.
Yeah.
For you, what are Leia's most defining moments or choices or lines in Return of the Jedi? Because she does get a more active role.
I always go to her and Wicket, and how the decision to see Wicket and the Ewoks overall, but in that moment it's Wicket, to see them as allies and potential help, when as the Empire has overlooked them, oppressed them, killed them, taken over their land, over their world. For Leia to be here in that moment and see Wicket as a living, breathing creature that is not just about how can they help us, but how can we help them as well in that moment. We need each other to get out of this tough spot the moment it really starts happening. She's already been friendly. She's already offered the treat and the helmet and some of my favorite little stuff. And Warwick Davis, 11 years old, I think really just kills it in those scenes. But you know what I mean? Like it leads to saving the day. Essentially, it's one of those little butterfly effect moments. Without that, what do you get? But I think it speaks to Leia, the leader, Leia, the fighter, later the hero, later Leia, the one with the big picture always in front of her, and the compassion and being able to open herself up spiritually to everything around her in the galaxy. That's not a small moment for me, where she's like, let me befriend this little guy. It might
Yeah.
be to our benefit.
Yeah, no, I think it's this great meeting point of lots of, I think, character traits of compassion and diplomacy, of just that recognition of like, uh, well, this little guy is, I'm on his planet,
Mhm.
maybe I should find out what his deal is.
Mm.
Even down to just the really direct, simple. Leia is sure that she needs to head this way, and he's like, no, 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 literally go the other way, and she trusts him,
Yeah,
right? You
right.
know, that's powerful because you can see lots of leaders going like, yeah, thanks, Bear. I know the direction I need to go. I know exactly what I'm doing. Like, and she's like, oh, this way? Okay.
That might be a shirt we'll never make, but thanks, Bear.
Thanks, Bear. I'll trust you. Um, yeah, I think for me, there's so many great moments. I know it's a favorite of yours that you bring up often and rightfully so. Is that like you did this episode, the lack of hesitation to get on the speeder bike? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
of seeing what the problem is, and there is a little bit of contrast of we get to see some of the higher up leadership in the rebellion, right? We get to see Mon Mothma, and we get to see Akbar. So we see all these leadership roles. We even Maydeen with the pointer. So
Mm.
in some ways, Leia is still a leader, but she is putting herself in the role of on the ground troop.
Yeah,
And I think
yeah.
that speeder bike chase is a part of that, of just like I am not just directing other people. I'm really throwing myself into this, and I'm going to control how this mission goes.
I would have also loved to seen Mothma down on there with the helmet on, getting on the speeder bike too. Would have been awesome. But in all jokes aside, it just elevated Leia again as a young kid watching that. Like she's down there. She's down there. That meant something.
Yeah, yeah. And going back to earlier in the film, the Bush Bausch Bush, however you choose to say it, always thought is so cool. Not just the design, but that she was dressed as a bounty hunter. That thermal detonator game that she plays. That she, we talked about her in New Hope as somebody who really knows the score,
Mm.
and clearly over her time, from she used to be the princess who was being groomed to be the eventual queen. And then she was a senator. And then she had to be in this rebellion with all of these, galactic stakes, and probably needed to know all about, supply lines and resources and troop movement. And now it is a part of her life. She also understands this world of bounty hunters and criminal scum.
Mm. Yeah. She can go low. She can go low.
Yeah, yeah. Any other kind of important moments, choices, lines that you wanted to highlight?
Just the whole movie. No, great stuff.
Yeah. Two other things for me. I always love that in the moment where her befriending Wicket pays off,
Mhm.
and the Ewoks, unleash on the Imperials, and it frees all of our rebel friends, and they, go into action. And they get their weapons. I always love that she is being a tactician, and she's the one who chooses to shoot the ATSD driver.
Yes, smart.
That's going to be the biggest problem. So I'm going to go for that first.
Yeah, that's great.
And then I also just never want to ignore the importance of she gets two great I know moments. She gets the call back to Han, and that is a fun moment of connection and banter, and kind of keeping them on the same level with that fun repartee. But also the important I know, somehow I've always known. So this is Leia's movie to know things.
To know things.
Even the idea of Leia is super important in a key moment in this film, in Luke's conflict with Vader, where Luke is trying to hide his connection, his compassion, his attachment to Vader, because it can be used against him. And of course, Vader does successfully use it against him. He senses the truth of Luke's having a sister, a twin sister, and threatens to turn her to the dark side, which causes Luke to lose his cool.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about the fact that even when Leia isn't present, the idea of Leia is motivating this incredibly key moment between Luke and Vader?
Oh man, I absolutely love that because it's so true. It hangs over both of them. I often try to get inside Vader's mind too. I think he's pretty. I don't even say cold and calculating, but I think there's a moment of pure evil and true intent in his words there. Of all right, cool, I'll kill you, and probably could turn her too. I think he believes that. But then I also just love what that moment means for the man buried deep inside that machine, because that's the moment that he learns that he says it as, Obi-Wan's failure is complete, but that Obi-Wan and Palpatine and Yoda's lie I've been living under for 20 years. Like it's all revealed to him there, and what that means to him, what that does, and how he ends it kind of all by saying, "Tell your sister, she was right." So to me, that stuff has to be at play in whatever is left of Anakin's mind in that moment, and so I think she's a driving force there indeed, and yeah, Luke and attachment and how he chooses. Again, the conversation about attachment can go pretty deep, but in that moment, comes from a right place, but out of fear and anger and everything like that. So yeah, no, Leia belongs there spiritually, and she is there.
Yeah, no, I love what you're saying about Vader. That is a moment where he has this huge, huge epiphany, and in the throes of being consumed by the dark side, he tries to use it tactically. Of like, yep, this is. I know this is what breaks people, is a fear of loss
Right.
of loved ones, and if he's trying to hide her, then this is his weakness that I've been looking for. I can break him, and then, yeah, coming around to that being his last words of, try to give my daughter a little bit of comfort by knowing that you, Luke, were right about me, that I am capable of compassion, that there was still good in me, is really powerful. It comes up a lot in the sequel trilogy, as we'll discuss, and I'm sure there are other moments in the original trilogy as well, but it's a reminder of how key Leia is to everything, that she is like the sun in lots of moments of Star Wars, where even when she isn't present, everything is many things are still rotating around her.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And did I say that? I probably said that line wrong, huh? I'll tell your sister. You were right. No, she was right. Sorry, trivia
Oh.
buffs. Please don't come at me. Yeah, the idea of it's funny you say the idea of Leia as a son, and I'm suddenly thinking of Holdo and Poe having their moment, talking about Leia, talking about the hope in the sun. So that all makes sense.
Yeah, and I think I've thought about that moment from lots of different angles, and the fun moment, different angle that I got from having this conversation is, if Vader is trying to break Luke by the fear of losing Leia, because Leia isn't there now, it's not an immediate fear. It's can you handle even the concept of losing this person? And what's interesting is, it works on Luke for a few moments, just as it worked on Anakin, his fear of losing Padme. But I kind of feel, and I want to ask your take on this, I kind of feel like if Luke was calm in that moment, he would know that Leia is not going to be broken. Leia is not going to turn to the dark side. So it really is a moment where it is about his fear of losing her, his fear of anything bad happening to her, because as he said to her, you've always been strong.
Yeah.
He should know she's not going to break. So it is really about the fear of loss rather than actual loss.
I 100% agree. No, that's kind of the point of the whole scene. And you said earlier in the conversation about before attachment kind of became this key word that people use and discuss when talking about Star Wars, as they should, because it's huge. But to go back, the spirit of it is there. It's in the DNA of Star Wars in that moment. We're talking about all the stuff going on with Vader. But I love that kind of what you said. It's like he's looking like this kid, man. I can't break him. Can't break him. I can't break him. And now he's hiding, and I can't find him, despite the fact that I think there's like 4 things to hide behind under there. But and then when he hits on it, it is like I got it, because this is what did me in, and I know it's going to do you in, and it does at that moment. You're so right. If he had been, we always use the example, even though Qui-Gon dies following this, but if he'd been Qui-Gon on his knees in the fight with Maul, breathing and taking in and just seeing what's happened next, if Luke had just been mindful, instead he loses it. But again, I understand it. That's the confusing thing of the slippery slopes of these downfalls of these Skywalkers. It starts from a good spot, but you're right. It's not fair. It's almost like it's not fair to Leia. Like, give her some credit, Luke.
Yeah.
Credit. I mean, this guy already tried. He already tortured her, tried to break her for information. It didn't work.
Yeah.
So yeah, great. No, I'm right with you. That's a great point.
Yeah. And it's so great that even though she isn't, physically in the scene, that a lot of what she has represented in the original trilogy is present. This question of, is compassion or attachment a weakness or a strength? And it seems like at the beginning of Empire, she's pushing it away, and then embraces it towards the end of Empire, and we get this moment where Luke, breaks and he allows it to be a weakness. He allows that fear to be something that's going to lead him to making choices he doesn't want to make, and then, much like his sister, he has that strength to find the power of compassion by showing his father mercy. And there's a great synergy to their journey there. So I think Empire for me is the movie where Leia truly, there's a focus on she has a personal emotional journey, but I would maybe argue with myself and say Leia has a little bit of an arc related to her Force heritage in Return of the Jedi. And, we get to see her in the beginning watching Luke as a Jedi, doing flips and spins and, going to town on Jabba's sail barge. Then when Luke tells her that she is the only hope for the Alliance if he doesn't make back, she denies it. She says, you have a power that I could never have, that I could never understand. And then I really think there is this moment where she accepts knowingly reaching into that power when she knows that Luke survived the Death Star.
Mm-hmm.
Does that arc work for you? Does that make sense to you? Do you want more, less?
Makes total sense. And maybe when I was like 10, I maybe wanted her to grab a lightsaber and meet Luke up there and get in the fight there up there. Luckily I'm not 10 anymore because I love what's going on here. But no, I think you're right. Again, talk about small moment that you can reanalyze and look at again of just like looking up and feeling Luke. It isn't just simply, yeah, he's my brother. I mean, she literally, I think, says that a few seconds later to Han, but it is. Yeah, that thing I felt before, the thing I may have always felt, it is in there. It is me, and it's part of who I am. And I don't need to deny that anymore. I don't need to fight against it, or just simply not think I can be that. And not put up a wall against that. Let me see where this could take me, and it takes her into a lot of different areas in her life, as we know. We learn a little bit later on. Well, decades later. We get the rest of the story. But no, I think you're right. I think that's a big small moment.
Yeah, I think there's so much power in Leia's arc of herself discovering that she is Luke's sister, powerful with the Force, that she is, a new hope as well, and in particular that she's Vader's daughter, right? That this is a little bit like A New Hope in that Luke's like, hey, here's an incredibly huge amount of information, some of which is really unpleasant that you're going to have to take some time to emotionally process. And we do get to see the great moment of her and Han, and we let we have this moment to see it sink in. But then she picks up and she moves on, and then that moment at the end, you can really look at it in terms of just like, oh, we're end of the trilogy. We're wrapping things up. Han is confused about her love of Luke, so we make it clear that that they're siblings and that she romantically loves Han. Great, everything all done. It's easy to see it that way, and it does function that way. But for me, I really like it as she does on the bridge say, "I know somehow I always knew," but she's still processing it, right? And just the way that she like looks up and says, "No, he wasn't on that thing when it blew up." There's something proactive about it. It's not like Luke reached out to her in Empire and she felt it. In other moments in her life, she's done things that she can't fully explain, but doesn't think about too much. Maybe she misunderstood something. And this is the moment where I think she like reaches into the Force. In this specific way. I don't think it's like she's suddenly like, wow, I can levitate things now. But I think she is using the Force.
Yeah, and I think looking back, it's more powerful than like I said at 10. Me going, couldn't she have taken the shuttle Titanium up to the Death Star to fight? No, it's keeping in line with what we know.
Yeah, and there's a great debate to be had. The great generational debate for both Leia and Finn of should they have picked up that lightsaber in that third film in that trilogy?
Yeah.
a great debate to be had. But I really like that moment because it serves so many purposes, including seeing her start to be accept that this is this part of who she is, that she is tied not just to Luke but to the Force.
Yeah.
So, big look at Leia in the original trilogy. Ken, I wanted to wrap up by us looking back. We are of the original trilogy generation, so we grew up with these ideas of Leia before, we read all these books, before we got to see her in the sequel trilogy. What did Leia, mean to you as you grew up from being a little kid and you became an adult and started taking your first steps into a larger world? What did Leia mean to you?
I mean, everything. It really, and that's not. I don't say that lightly. Growing up as Star Wars being so prevalent in my life, and this is truly, the type of moments where I know you and I both miss Jennifer popping in to have give her takes on Leia, and she has before. And for those who want, check out some of the Happy Beeps episodes she's done on Carrie Fisher and Leia and all those kind of things before. But from my perspective, I mean, she too was the only woman in my life in a way, other than my mom and sister. No disrespect there, mom. But this was my thing, and I say that as both good and bad thing, and nothing against you, Mon Mothma. You're too one of my favorite characters. But Leia was everything. So she was an action star to me. She was a leader. She was a romantic interest. I always joke that I am of that generation beyond just a simple surface sexual awakening kind of joke for me, or just an actual reality of my life. Who she was as a feisty, strong fighter who speaks her mind, and that's always been prevalent in what I look for in partners, and what I feel I have now. I feel I have a diminutive yet powerful feisty princess on my hands, and I'm thankful for it. And that all does come from Leia being kind of it, and being kind of the total package, because she had to be. What pressure on that character? What pressure on that character for an entire generation? And at one point, it was kind of cool, was kind of a thing, just to, I think, put her down into a still bikini wearing lady, and that became a thing. And look, yeah, it is what it is. But I love seeing her now as the Hutt Slayer, and seeing her as a more complete character even now. And that's where you talk about becoming an adult and growing up with this character, being able to look back and see these things that I didn't pick up before, or see these things I was too young to understand because I hadn't lived enough to apply them to my own life or to learn. And then the final thing for me, and I'll shut up about it all, is getting to know more about Carrie Fisher um, as she became more open. She was always open, but I think there was a point in time, where we can't. She was mocked for her weight gain or other things and stuff later on. I remember those tabloid headlines. Look at Princess Leia now, and so to live in that and see her finally come out from under that and own who she was, good and bad, and deal with the things and become an inspiration to many generations of fans, particularly women and young women. I continue to have Leia be everything to me, and I'm forever thankful for this character. It's no small feat that it all worked out the way it did.
Yeah, well, incredibly well said. I give you 17 well saids. I'll just say it once to save time. But yeah, there is so much in growing up with being a big Star Wars fan, being for myself a person who really liked genre and pop culture stuff, and sometimes finding people who also did, but sometimes having it be my private little world that I could escape to when other things were not great in life. And she was there. She was outside of Torn Far, Mon Mothma. She
Yeah.
was the main character who was a woman, and yeah, I don't always want to focus on it because I think it can sometimes take away from other discussions. But yeah, it's an undeniable truth. Is a a young straight man, Carrie Fisher is a beautiful woman, and
Yeah.
there's an obvious just attraction to her growing up and figuring all that stuff out.
Yeah.
But I think for me growing up, it wasn't just like she's pretty. That was
Mhm.
never it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was a reality.
Yeah.
But Princess Leia was different than other, watch a random sitcom and a character has a bit part and she's, very pretty and you're like, wow,
Yeah.
she's pretty. And I'm growing up and figuring these things out. But Princess Leia was always so much more than that because she was so well-rounded because, as you say, action hero, but she was, funny and had this great emotional strength and like emotional intelligence, right? That I think as I grew up and I started to want to date, Leia was like this figure of, um, look at how, uh, look at how complex
Mhm.
and powerful and thoughtful women are. I should really work hard to live up to that. To
Mm.
to honestly, in my 20s, as I was growing up and trying to figure things out, of Leia was this sort of symbol of honestly, like, I need to form myself into a human being who would ever be worthy
Yeah, yeah.
of being a part of someone like Leia's life,
Yes. Yeah, and we're talking very specifically from our two perspectives growing up, and many like us too. But yeah, no, it's big. No, it's big, and I think in other properties and other things I watched, I've never been satisfied by any kind of underwritten, one-dimensional, shrieking, violent female characters. Right? Like it just like, because I had Leia, and that was this great standard. And Carrie Fisher made that standard even higher than I think even sometimes the written words on the page. You know what I mean? And that influenced me greatly, and it still does. But that growing up, I'm talking like 12, 13. Like I didn't, get in there. This is like, grab a blaster, do it, because I want you there with me as a fan, and that's part of the influence too on me.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't think I would have been able, in younger years to put it into words, but yeah, there's definitely some, not great representations of women where they're not fleshed out, they're not,
Yeah.
well-rounded characters, and you got to see a lot of that growing up when we did,
Hmm.
and so I think for me, because I was so invested in Star Wars, I probably can't even begin to imagine how extremely important for me and my development that it was to see such a incredibly well-rounded, powerful, strong human character like Princess Leia.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent. Good and emotional conversation, Ken.
Yeah. No, that's worthy of, hopefully worthy, maybe kind of worthy of Leia and Carrie Fisher herself.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're right. It is very good to come back to, they are different entities. Princess
Yeah.
Leia, I know, is a fictional character. I know, but shares much with Carrie Fisher, and yeah, Carrie Fisher's, inspiration on me, as we continued in life and got to see what an amazing writer she was, and to see the power of the way that she used wit and comedy to cope. That is another whole podcast about how influential that is to the way I try to look at and think about comedy, of how to use it with great power comes great responsibility. And Carrie Fisher is somebody who used the power of comedy with great responsibility to make people, to help people get through life when it's hard, and that's really admirable too. We are going to continue this conversation. We are going to talk about the character of Leia's journey through the sequel trilogy. There's a ton of great stuff to talk about. Ultimately, I'm glad that we broke up these episodes. One, because the episode would have been at least 3 hours long if we hadn't. But also, it'll be great to kind of sit with this, because I think what's fascinating about the sequel trilogy, and a part of what we're going to discuss, Ken, is by the time the sequel trilogy is coming around, creators and actors are dealing with the character of Leia, but they're also dealing with everything that you and I just talked about, with the legacy of Leia and how that was going to, carry through in the story of the sequel trilogy. So I am excited to discuss that.
Can't wait.
All right, Ken, do you want to let us know where people can find us?
I'd love to, as Carrie Fisher would probably say, get on with it. What are you waiting for? Come on, tell everyone about yourselves. We are on Twitter at ForceCenter Pod. We are on Instagram and YouTube as well, like our Facebook page at ForceCenter Podcast. Podcast is available a lot of different spots, including Anchor, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and now Amazon Music. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter. And you can support us directly at patreon.com/ForceCenter. Always happy to have new patrons joining us. And from there, you can get into our Discord server and talk Star Wars with some great folks. You can follow me at Catnapsock and go to catnapsock.com for more information on all the things I'm doing. You, Joseph.
Yeah, for me, you can follow me Twitter and Instagram at Joseph Scrimshaw, and you can check out my website, josephscrimshaw.com, for all of my other comedy adventures. But for now, for myself, for Ken, for Leia Organa, this has been Force Center.